Hey guys, let's say about what you're on. We can tackle today's topics. So everyone's kind of, for a lot of us, technically done with our Caxton, which is good. So everything's looking good, just possibly a couple of tweaks that I've mentioned to you guys as well in terms of spacing and some alignment. Cadbury also, of course, needs to be completed, and so does Almay. Now, with every module, you're going to get exercises, almost every module. But InDesign, Illustrator, and Photoshop has class activities. After you are done with them, you are to submit them. So that's what we're going to be tackling today. How to get your work out of the software so that you could submit something that you've done. So that's why these do need to be done. So before your test, which is next week, Tuesday, reminder, all activities, Caxton, Cadbury, Almay, and now your fourth one that you're going to get, that all needs to be done and submitted. So we're going to have today, we're going to have tomorrow, and we're even going to have Monday to finish this all up. But because I've been giving you time now in the mornings to work with it, you guys are already like 80% done. Some of you are done completely. Okay. So before we get started with anything else, yesterday, what we did, we looked at tabs and tables. Now, tabs and tables were our last two features. Is there anything here that you guys want me to touch on again with regards to these two features? How do we do is that on a different page that we're speaking about? Okay, cool. So let me just open the actual document up. So any questions about Caxton itself, besides just tabs and tables, elements that we've been working on already? So I got a question here from Rowan, just asking for a bit of help on how do we do, I'm assuming it's this, right, the pure Caxton part. Now, has anyone managed to do this? Okay, so Shreya, you can perhaps tell us how you went about doing that. Okay, so there were, of course, multiple ways you could go about doing this. Separate text boxes. If you guys were more confident with the text settings, could do it in one text box. But essentially, the easiest way to go about doing this is similar to how Shreya mentioned, which was working with 2 or 3 text boxes that you need. So I'll start you off with it. I'd create my text box for Caxton itself. So I'm going to call that Caxton. I'll bring in the font that I need. This is going to be the Roman font that we've been using. And I'm just going to increase that size as well. Okay. Now, I'll worry about color a bit later on, so I'm not going to be adjusting that yet. But that is essentially going to be my starting point, Caxton itself, just the word. Then afterwards, I've got the word pure, and then I've got publishers 1912. Now those can be done in separate text boxes entirely. So I'll create another text box for the word pure, and I give that the font Caviar Dreams. Once that has been created, I can then take that same text and I can arrange it in the position that it needs to be at. So think of it almost as like building blocks when you're creating that particular logo element. And that's what it would start to more or less look like. And then all you'll need is a third text box for publishers, 1912. So that's how you're going to create this little element at the top. If you had to do this with one text box, you're going to have to be working with lines of text. See here. Let's make that Caviar Dreams. I'll make that smaller. So if you're doing this with one text box, you'll have to work with lines of text. And in order to get it to shift so that it goes just before or after the letter C, you're going to have to work with things like indents. So the indent is going to get me to move this a little bit more further in the box. I wouldn't use a first line indent. I would just use a left indent. That's just going to move the line itself. And then in order to bring that down, you would need to use your baseline option. Baseline works with the text, and I can drop that down like so. So if you guys wanted to use one text box for this, instead of working with building blocks, you're going to have to work with lines of text. So if you're working with one text box, I've got one text box, 2 lines of text here. I've got the word pure. In order to get the word pure, just to shift a little bit further in the text box so that it goes after the letter C, you're going to need to use your indent options just to shift that further within the box. So when I adjust an indent like so, you can actually see it does jump towards a certain point. Now, keeping in mind, I'm using one text box for this. Then to take the word pure and bring that lower, you would need to adjust elements like your baseline shift. You could also adjust leading as well. Now, baseline is typically for single letters, but if you want 2 lines of text, like so, leading, which is your value under your point size, can also be used to bring lines of text closer to each other. So leading could be another option as well, like so. And then whatever I type here is, of course, going to add itself on the same line. Yes, so this is done with a single text box, but you're just going to have to go through more formatting options. Okay. Any other questions with regards to Caxton? Okay, speak now or forever hold your peace. Caxton, there's nothing else for me to show you guys. All right, so we're going to stop with what you're doing now, okay? And we're going to focus more on the sort of last checks that you will do in a document before you can send that out for print and before you can export. So I'm going to ask you guys to just save up what you are on. We're still going to be on Caxton, but we're not making anything. So I shouldn't see you guys still editing or fixing anything up. Just save what you're on, and then we can come back to that at a later stage. So Caxton, of course, took us through the majority of InDesign as far as editing text, working with pages, working with layers as well, and even working with parent pages and page numbering. Now, as you guys were going, what you should have been doing is, after you were done with the page, organizing your content into the relevant layers itself. Now, layers you can do afterwards. Okay, after you're done with the design, you can go organize elements into the relevant layers. So whatever text elements I have, I'm going to bring that into text. You'll see here on my country life page, I've already organized these into the relevant areas. Tabs and tables, I did that yesterday, so I need to go and bring that into my text and images. Okay, so don't forget about the organizing of your layers, as that does help a lot when it comes to adjusting stacking order, especially if you've got a lot of content on your page. We looked at creating colors within this, adding in spot colors as well. Now, spot colors, we're going to talk a bit more about in depth when we get to Illustrator and when we do a particular print module with you guys. But for now, I've given you guys the base understanding on what a spot color is for. Now, remember, spot colors were your special type of colors that you couldn't really get mixed using CMYK, in which we went and had an entire conversation on Pantone themselves. Now, there are other uses for spot colors, but we will come back to that. In your swatches panel, because we have now gone and used whatever colors we need, what you should do at the end of your design, when you are done, is delete any colors you haven't used. Because like I mentioned before, depending on the colors you're working with, maybe not Caxton in particular, you may end up with shades and shades when you were figuring out what you wanted to use. So at the end, we must always go and just remove whatever wasn't used. We didn't do this at the beginning because we hadn't technically used all of our custom colors. So those would have been deleted. So after my design is done, I can go into my swatches palette like so. And what we are doing now is our last sort of ends of my design, my last checks and processes, which is to sort of clean up my document, clean up the layers and clean up the swatches. So in the swatches panel, we go into your options menu at the top right. We click on that once, and we're going to choose in here, select all unused colors. So the swatches panel, and select all unused colors. From there, whatever shades you didn't use are going to get highlighted, and then you can go ahead and click on the bin icon at the bottom of this panel. So that is going to delete every shade that was not used. The only thing this won't touch is the none and the first three colors, registration, paper, and black, because those are kind of your default colors. You need a black, you need a white. And none isn't a color. It's just something you use to remove a color. So what your swatches panel should look like is something similar to mine. I, of course, have used pink somewhere within this design, so it's keeping that in. But the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to clean up my swatches, and then I went ahead and I also cleaned up my layers. Now, when we want to send a document, okay, do you guys think there are anything, or is there anything that we need to check for before we send off our document to print or we share it with other people to work with? I need to check for spelling. We should always run a spell check. You can choose to do the spell check while you are working, or you can run it at the end, because it's going to look through the entire document. InDesign has the built-in spell checker for you, so you don't have to go and read through everything. We can run this process. No matter where you are in the document, you don't have to be on a certain page. To run your spell check, nothing needs to be selected. We're going to go up to the Edit menu, down into Spelling. So Edit, Spelling. This is only going to look at text boxes. And what you're going to go to then is Check Spelling. So this is how you run your spell check. So Edit, Spelling, Check, Spelling. Now this is going to go based on the sort of way we would spell words. So the word color, you're going to get your C-O-L-O-U-R and so on. But if in some cases where it's trying to replace your Z with or your S with a Z, we know that's not how we spell certain words here in South Africa. So just use your discretion when choosing the words that it's trying to autocorrect. Sometimes it is going to pick up words that technically don't exist. For example, Caxton book, it's not a word, it's just a title. So not everything needs to change. So when you run your spell check, it's going to start from the beginning of your document, and this is what it's going to look like. You have the word that it's picked up, and then you have the word that you want it to change to. This box at the bottom is all of the suggestions. If I don't want to change it, I skip. I skip to the next one. Now this is going to pick up all of your placeholder text as spelling errors, because it's not English and it doesn't make sense. So in this case, I'm going to ignore wherever I use the placeholder text. But when you guys are working with your actual layouts, like your assignments and so on, where you have English, you're going to want to run the spell check. But in this case, fair warning, it's going to consider your placeholder as an error. So I'm just going to skip. And as you see, of course, it's going to go through every single word. And we can continue and we can continue. But essentially, if there was a word I wanted to change, I can choose it from this list. And we're not going to skip through the entire document. This is just to show you guys how to use it. I can choose it from this list, click on it, and then I can use change. Change all is if I want to change all of the words that were spelled like that to this new version instead. So it's going to pick up all of the, let's zoom in, whatever that word is, it's going to pick all of those up and it's going to change it to whatever this word is, which is English, of course. So that is what your change all is going to do. Your ignore all, pretty self-explanatory. It's going to ignore all of those particular words. So this is how your spell check works. You don't need to adjust any other settings within this. It is going to search your document, of course. So we want to leave it as document. But as you're working, if you know that that is the correct way, like names, locations, and people, and so on, then skip it because you don't want to change it. So we skip and we move on. If you are done, and if the spell check is done and it can't pick up any other words, you can click done and it's going to automatically close for you. So every time you change something, it's going to update. So that is the edit menu, spelling, check spelling. Okay, you guys can stop skipping all of your, I can just hear the mouse just keep going. You guys can stop and you can close down that spell check because I think we know how that works. So of course, in Caxton, we had a lot of Latin and so on. Now there are other areas when it comes to checking words. Now the spell check is kind of your default. The first thing you're going to do is run a spell check. But you also have maybe a couple of other things that you may want to adjust. For example, in our sort of text that we brought in on the country life page, this was English text. And inside of here, we've got, of course, a full article. Now, what if every time it says the word vital, I want to change that to say something else? This is all falling, Shreya, you okay? Okay. So this is all falling under your checking of your document and also just being able to easily edit text. So if there's a word that's repeating throughout a article, maybe you misspelled somebody's name or you forgot or you just gave them the wrong name. You misspelled a product name, for example, or I want to change the word vital to say health. I'm not going to go every single time it says vital and retype out the word health. So specifically, when it comes to text, as part of your text checking options, you have under the type menu, a find and change. Okay, not under type, sorry, edit. So edit, find, and change. This is specifically if there's a word that you want to change throughout the document. So I don't have to have anything highlighted, but what I am going to do is I'm just going to make sure I'm on the article that I want to look at. Then I'm going to go to the edit menu, find, change. So again, it's all falling under your checking of your words. Now in here, you're going to get a couple of options. You can change text. You can work with elements called glyphs, which we will come to. And then you can work with elements called object and color. Now, what does this box allow you to do? This box, for example, under color, I am able to, throughout the entire document, let's say, wherever it's using my green, I wanted to find the shade of green. I want to change it to the shade of pink instead. So wherever green was used, I want to change it to pink. I have the option to adjust tint and so on. And then I also have the option to work with either text or graphics. Yes. It's going to change wherever the color was used. So if it's on a parent page, it's going to adjust. So it's looking for my shade of green. I'm changing that to pink. If I click change all, and it's going to say it found 6 instances of where that shade of green was used, and all 6 of that was changed successfully. So what I should see now is wherever I used that shade of green, as you can see, it's now been updated to that pink. So when it comes to being able to quickly adjust certain aspects, change the color of a number of objects, change the text, I wouldn't suggest going in and finding them and changing it individually. unless it's a small amount. But the larger pages you have, the larger amounts, you're going to want to use the edit, find, change. And you don't need to have anything selected because it's going to look through the entire document. So these are the elements that you can use a find change for: color and objects. Text is what I'm looking at specifically. So I said, I want to change all of the words that were called vital. So every time it finds the word vital, I'm spelling it the same way. If you spell it wrong, it's of course not going to pick it up. And I want to change it to the word health instead. So it should be able to pick up the word vital and health. Now, if you're not sure on if it's going to work, you have a find option. If I click on find, it's going to automatically highlight the word vital for me. If I also want to include the areas within the sort of brackets, then I'd want to include the brackets within my text. But you just need to be aware of what the words need to be. So I want to change vital and I want to change that to health. I'm now going to click on the change all. So it's found 9 replacements. I'll click on done. And here in my text, wherever it had the word vital, it's changed to health. It's going to keep the same font and the formatting options. It's just allowing me to mass change a word. All right, so every time it said vital, that's changed to health. So you guys can go ahead and try that out. You don't need to have anything selected. You just go up into the edit menu, find change, and you type out the word that you wanted to change, and then you type out the word you wanted to change to. So the first option is find, and the second is change. So finding. All right. So find change is going to be very useful when it comes to elements like certain phrases, names, locations, and products, or whatever words that you have in your text that you need to mass update. So even if maybe you made a spelling mistake in someone's name, the spell check is not going to be able to find that because a person's name is not part of the dictionary. So this is when you would use that in this case instead. Find your text, change it to the correct word. So this is dealing specifically with the following options: text, object, and color. The last thing that may also assist you when it comes to editing is being able to change the font. Now, if you used character and paragraph styles, which we've been through, we understand that if you make a change to a style, you can update that and have it update across the rest of the document. But if you didn't use styles, you didn't use character and you didn't use paragraph styles, this is what you will use to change elements like a font, specifically only fonts, and you want to mass adjust that across the document. Nothing selected. This particular element you're not going to find in the edit menu, however, because it's dealing with specifically text. You're going to find that under type. So type menu, find replace font. In this is particularly going to help you when you have missing fonts as well. When it comes up that you don't have the particular font that you've used in the document. because now you're going to have to go and replace that for every single instance that it was used. So this is for updating the fonts and also relinking missing fonts. So it's type menu, find replace font. How it works is you have a list of all the current fonts used within the document. This is the entire document, it's not page specific. And let's say every time I have a Caviar Dreams bold, I'll select it. I want to then replace that with a different font. So it's going to look for every instance of Caviar Dreams bold, and in the replace with section, I need to choose the font that I want to use. Now, unfortunately, you won't be able to get a preview in this list of what it's going to look like. So at this stage, you would kind of need to know beforehand the font that you want to change it to. You need to just place that somewhere in the document so that you can see how that looks. I'm just going to go with Museo Slab as that is here. And I have the ability, of course, to find first. So it's found Caviar Dreams bold. If I click on change all, that is going to change every instance of Caviar Dreams to Museo Slab. Now, because the font has changed, it does also mean in some cases, my text box might need to be adjusted to fit the text. Okay, because it's still keeping the same size, it's keeping all the formatting, it's just the font that it's updating. So this is useful for mass changing brand fonts within a magazine that you've decided to use for headings and subheadings. And also if you've got missing fonts and you want to replace that with something else, because that's going to appear throughout the entire document, a fast way to adjust everything is find and replace font. Okay, and that's only for fonts itself. You're not going to have any option for imagery, as that is very specific in terms of what images are, where they're placed, and how you size them as well. All right, so those are some of your, I'd say, first stages when it comes to checking your document before you can send that out. Running a spell check and checking all of your words, your text, and your font usage. Okay, so that's step number one. So after I run a spell check, what would be the next thing that I need to do? Okay, check if the placement of the photos are correct. So at this stage, after you run the spell check, you'd of course go through your document to make sure everything's in the correct position. And in this case, it's according to what Caxton looks like. But the next stage, document-wise, check for any errors. The next stage, document-wise, is to check for something called an error. And this is something we kind of saw on day one, and guaranteed most of you guys probably have within the document. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you may see a red dot that says errors. Can give you a number. Is anyone seeing a green dot? Okay, awesome. So those of you that are seeing green, it means that InDesign hasn't found any errors. If you're seeing red, you have errors. Now, what types of errors? You're not going to have to guess what the errors are. InDesign will tell you what the error is and where it is in the document. So even if you don't have any, you're going to follow along for this stage. At the bottom, where it says errors or no errors, you're going to click on the tiny arrow that's next to that. This is step number 2. This is called a pre-flight option, where you check for document errors, like overset text, missing images. Pre-flight panel. And in here, you're going to get a list of all of the errors that you have throughout the document. Now, I am going to make some errors on my end. So I'm just going to adjust the text box. Let's say I'm going to pull something out. Okay. All right. So I've made some errors on purpose. I've done an error to text. I've done an error to images. I've got 2 errors. Now, this is how many errors you've got. Anyone got higher than 2? Now, sometimes when you load into your file, you could see something as high as 12. And that's all dependent on your images and your text. So how do we know what the issue is? We go into that drop-down menu, down into pre-flight, and in here it categorizes based on the issues. So I've got 2 errors. It won't tell you spelling mistakes. This won't show you spelling mistakes. The only thing your pre-flight menu will tell you is if you've got missing links and if you've got overset text. Now, overset text, if I go into that menu, it's telling me how many text errors I have. It's telling me it's overset, and then it's going to tell you the page that it's on. So it will give you exactly where you need to go. So I've got overset text on a frame on page 3. So if I click on that number, it's going to jump to that page and to the text frame that has that issue. Now, overset text means what? There's too much text to fit in the text box. So I need to do something that's going to sort that out. In this case, I'm just going to take my selection tool and I'm going to make my text box larger so that I can fit that in. When an error is fixed, it's going to disappear from your file. So you will need to, for every error, go to that page and fix it up. Otherwise, when we export this as a PDF, it's not going to magically fix up for you. Okay. Are you guys feeling cold? Okay. Let me know instead of sitting there and shivering. Yeah, I'm not that evil. Just let me know. Okay. Yeah, let's keep you awake. Okay. All right. So imagery, of course, that's for text. I mean, you've seen me put on my jacket and just walk around like that. So you just let me know about that aircon. So text, that's overset text. Links refers to what? Okay, things that I brought in. So links does not refer to an actual link that's going to take me to a website. Okay. In InDesign, links refer to images or anything that you file placed within the document, which most of the time is imagery. So when I go into that, I have one issue and it's a missing link. Missing link means, and if you remember how InDesign adds in your images, it file places. Are they permanently added to the design? No. It's created a connection to where it was on the server, which is why, and it was for Almay specifically, when you guys just open Almay, all the images had question marks, red question marks, because it couldn't create the link. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't be able to see it. It does mean, however, that when you send that off for print, it's going to go very pixelated. And in some cases, it can just disappear entirely and leave a gray block because it can't find the image. So we need to always check for missing links. Otherwise, you're going to end up with gaps within the design. So this one will tell you the image specifically, and again, the page. But how do we fix up missing links? All right, so let's try that out. So we click on the little question mark and you find where the image is. So this is going to open up your Finder, and then I will need to go into where I have my images. No comments on my desktop. That's just how it looks. I'll find my images. That's under Assets, and it's sitting within my folder. All right, so I'm looking for the chrysanthemum image somewhere within this. Now, when images go missing, there could be a range of reasons. Either I haven't connected to the training server where the images are from, or I pulled the images into a different location. I changed them from the server onto maybe my desktop. Those are the reasons why it wouldn't be able to connect. So I would need to go and find that particular type of image. Now, in this case, perhaps I've deleted it. So it is unable to find that. But here it is, it's outside of my links and it's sitting in a different folder entirely. So when I choose it and I hit open, that's going to automatically adjust. Now, depending on how many missing links you have, if you relink one image using this method, InDesign will try to find the rest of those images in the new location that you've gone to. And if it still can't find them, it will show up as missing. So that is how you relink missing images, okay, through the pre-flight. So we should always look at the pre-flight last before we aim to send this off for submission or for exporting. That's going to give you every single error. All right. Another method that you may want to use is if you go to the window menu down in the links palette. This specifically shows you every image only. So window menu links will show you every single image as well as the page that it is on. If something is missing, this is also where you will see your red question mark. And it does also give you a bit of information on the type of image you're working with. Now, a lot of this information isn't going to make sense at the moment because it's talking about resolution, something called PPI, and then it's talking about color space and so on. But this we will learn more about when you get into softwares like Photoshop. That's where we'll learn those phrases. But the links palette also allows you to relink an image. So you have a specific relink option. This is also useful if you want to replace that image with something else without needing to file place. So if I go to this image of the flower, for example, and I click on the relink option, I do have the option to go and choose an entirely different image if you go through the links panel. I'll say okay to that, and it's going to bring in the image. I will still need to do any fitting options thereafter. Okay, so the pre-flight panel is very important that we check before we move on to our next stage. So I want you guys, if you've got any errors, to go and sort those out before we move on to exporting this and sending this off. Okay, if you don't have any errors, then that's okay. And that's what we want. We don't want any errors within the document. Keeping in mind that this won't show you spelling errors. It won't show you any color related errors. So if you don't have a color that was used but not saved, it's specifically for text, overset text, and for missing images or missing fonts. So a font you've used is no longer available. You know your text is going to highlight pink. Okay, so that is what your pre-flight panel will show you. I'm just going to give this a quick save. Yes. Okay, so good question. If an image is set in the RGB color mode, and of course, when you're printing, it's printing to CMYK. The rest of the document colors are CMYK. Now, specifically with bringing in images that are RGB, when it prints, they will have a slight color adjustment because at this stage right now, we are not able to go and change the color mode of the image in InDesign. You need to do that in Photoshop. So you can bring in RGB images into a CMYK document. It just means that those images will print out with a slight color difference. And typically, it just ends up being a little bit more dull than what you see on your page. Okay, so you won't get any issues for RGB images not matching your CMYK color space because that is something that happens. Photoshop will be the place where you'd want to change color modes, but we will get to that when we get to Photoshop. All right. Okay, once you've done with those errors, let's go ahead and give that a save. And we're going to look at two things here. Firstly, if I want to share this file, let's say you guys decide one day, whether it's InDesign, Illustrator, or even Photoshop, you decide one day you want to take your InDesign file home to work on it at home. Now, remembering you need access to the actual InDesign file to work with this. So we need to be able to take this file and send it either over email, send it into a Google Drive. However, if you are doing that, you cannot just take this InDesign file and send it across? Any reason why? Why I can't just take Caxton book and dump it in an email and send it across? What issues might I get? Where is my images? Where's my laptop at home going to get the images from? Where's my laptop at home going to get the fonts from? Similar to if you guys needed to work on a different computer and you want to take your InDesign file across. You can't just take that InDesign file and expect it to magically relink on a different device. When it's on your original computer, all of the links have been already created. So there is a way, a proper way in which you send off an InDesign file for somebody else to edit. Maybe you're working with somebody in class, you're doing a group project and they need to do this particular design or this page. You need to create something called a package. Okay, so if you want to share an InDesign file to work on somewhere else on a different computer or somebody else needs to use it, you need to create a package. To create a package, your file must of course be saved. You go up to the File menu, and you also mustn't have any errors. File menu, and you're going to look for Package. That's at the bottom of that menu. If you have missing images, missing fonts, those images are not going to come across in your package. So we make sure we have no errors. So File menu, Package. You're then going to get a little box. It does not matter where you are in the document because this is going to concern the entire file. In here, it's going to give you some information. It's going to say how many fonts you've used. It's going to indicate if you've got any missing images. And it's also going to talk about linked images as well. Now, there are a few other areas within this where it talks more about imagery and more about fonts, but we're not going to look at that just yet. You're just going to concern yourself with if there's any missing options or any errors, you need to fix that up first. When you come into the packaging area, all you need to do is click on Package. So there's not a lot of work required on your end as far as creating a package is going to go. Once you click on Package, you're then going to be asked to save that. So what it's going to do is it's going to create a folder. It will automatically create a folder where it's going to consolidate all of the images you used, all of the fonts, and even a copy of your InDesign file into one neat little folder. And that folder will be what you send and share in order to work with it. So right now it's asking you, where do you want to save that folder? So I'm going to choose my InDesign file. You're going to save this, of course, on your desktop. Or not your desktop, your server, sorry. Yeah, so server, I'm on my desktop. And I'm looking at the projector because my screen has actually gone pink. So it does look a little bit awkward. But on your server, at the top, you have the name of the folder it's going to create. So by default, it goes based on your document name. Now, if you're working with Untitled 1, Untitled 10, and Final 3, and Final 4, that's of course going to be an issue. So I would suggest checking that name and renaming it to the correct activity or whatever it is you're working on. You can take out the word folder, it adds it there in by default. If it's not there, it's not going to change the way it's going to save. But you must double check that name. Then at the bottom of your Finder window, you're going to get some options. Now, these are very important because this decides what the folder has in it. And you must always have the top 3 selected. So if there's fonts that you used, you wanted to copy the fonts. The only font that won't be copied is an Adobe font. So if you activated something on the cloud, it does not get saved as a font file that the person can install. It would just ask them to activate it on their end. You are going to make sure linked graphics are ticked on because all of the images that you guys have pulled across, the person's going to need a copy of that, or you're going to need a copy of that when you're sharing. Update graphic links, you're going to keep that checked on so that the person doesn't have to relink any of those images. And then very important, you must have IDML checked on as well. You don't need to use document hyphenation and fonts. We leave these two off, but IDML must be checked on. Anyone remember what IDML is? It's an InDesign file that can be opened on any version of InDesign. So INDD is what you have by default, meaning I'm on 2026. If I gave you guys my Caxton file and you're on 2025 and you open up that InDesign file, it's going to ask you to convert because it's using, or it was done using, a different version of InDesign. But if you want to skip the conversion process, and maybe you're sharing to someone who has 2023, 2022. Believe me, out in industry, people still are using the older version of the software. So when you guys are out there, you're going to want to make sure IDML is on so that even if you are up to date, that person using 2022 can still open your file without needing to convert it. That's the purpose of IDML. It's compatible with older versions of InDesign. All right, so by default, I always leave that on. I don't turn that off for any reason. Now you do have the option to include a PDF, but we're going to do that in a separate stage. But right now, it's saving to the server. I have my first three options on, and I have include IDML. Once that is on, you're then going to click on package. Now, how long this takes depends on the size of your file and whatever content you have within it. So if you have more pages, it's going to take longer. But right now it's telling you, it's giving you a bit of a warning talking about copywriting and fonts and imagery and so on. You can read that at a later stage. I'm going to skip over this. I'm going to say okay. And now it's going to load. And it's pretty fast. Depending on, again, what you've got going on, it can take a couple of seconds to maybe a couple of minutes if you're working with large pages and large amounts of content. But once that's done converting on your end and exporting, to show you what's being created, since it's done on my end, here on my desktop is the Caxton book package that I saved. In the Caxton book folder, this is what it creates for you. It creates a copy of your InDesign file, all set up, all of your content. It creates the IDML, and it also copies across any fonts, any system fonts that you're going to need. In links, it's going to give you all of the images. So now with this file, if I want to take this home and I want to work on this on a different computer at home, this is the folder that I take. So that when I open this up, all my images are there. I have access to the fonts that I may need, and I'm not going to need to go hunting or looking for those images elsewhere. Similar to if you are sending that to other people to work on, you must package the file. If you give them just the InDesign file, they're going to have all the errors possible. Text, imagery, colors, fonts, they're going to have every error possible within an InDesign file. All right. So packaging consolidates all of your content into one neat little folder, and that's what you can share and send, specifically for editing purposes. Okay, any questions about packaging? All right, so once you guys are done there, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to go through PDFs and exporting for print purposes. All right. Cool. So save up what you've got, and then I'll see you guys after break. I am putting the aircon on just for a little bit. I'll put it on again and off again if it gets cold. All right, so what did we do? Forgot. Okay, so the last thing we did here was packaging. So now you guys know how to properly share your InDesign files across. When you get given any sort of exercise or an assignment that asks you to submit an open file, where I want to be able to come into your InDesign file, see your layers, see your parent pages, this is how you're going to send that file. You create a package of it, and that is the folder that you then send onto the Learn portal. So anytime we ask of you in your assignment, send us an open file. This is the process. You save your work, you go to File, Package, you do whatever needs to be done there, and the folder that you then get out of that, let's go back into my InDesign area, okay? The folder that you get out of that, that is how you send your files correctly. Okay, and that is how, of course, we will be using to mark assignments from there onwards. So if you have missing images, if you have missing fonts, that's not going to help you in terms of marks. So this is the proper way to be sending and sharing files amongst each other with us, and even if you need to change devices that you need to work on. All right, question? Okay, I'll come to you now. All right, so before we continue with anything else, the next thing we're going to look at is the PDF, which is the option that we didn't initially turn on when we were exporting. Now, everyone knows what a PDF is. What is that? And if you click on InDesign, okay, you can just drag this to the side. It's fine. We'll have to kind of restart for that to work. Okay. Okay, a PDF, you're telling me it's a PDF. Okay, so a PDF is a PDF, but does anyone know what PDF stands for? Huh? So, portable document file. So PDF is a portable document file, meaning it is basically your InDesign file, but exported in a way that I'm not going to need the software to go and look at that and read that. So if you are needing to share files purely for viewing purposes, you want to show somebody, you want feedback on it, or even if you want to print, you need to export as a PDF. So PDF stands for Portable Document Format. And you can have various types of PDFs. Now, I'm sure when you guys are, or if you've worked with elements like Google Docs, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word, when you needed to export as a PDF, it was quite straightforward. It was just file, save as PDF. And then it gave you the PDF and that was it. But now when it comes to professional softwares and professional use of PDFs, it is not that straightforward because you have PDF types. And your types of PDFs determine elements like the colors, the quality of your images, and how your printer is going to know where to trim off elements like bleed. So to export as a PDF within InDesign, we can go up into the File menu, and you have two ways of doing so. You have Save a Copy, or you can go straight into Adobe PDF Presets. So File menu, Adobe PDF presets. And these are the PDF options that you have. So it is not just a straightforward file, save as PDF. Now, what we're going to do is I want you to just click on any one of these, because no matter which one you choose, you are all going to end up in the same area as I am. So if you're going to File, PDF, let's just stick with the high quality print. Let's use that one first. File, Adobe PDF, high quality print. This is then going to ask you where you want to save this. So of course, we're going to be saving this onto the server. Again, it takes on the name of your document. So if yours isn't Caxton Book, let's change that to Caxton Book. Once you've got that set up, we're then going to click on Save. Now this, no matter which preset you choose, it's all going to bring you to the same box. So I want us to get to this stage before I go and explain anything else. So File, Adobe PDF Presets, choose High Quality Print, set where it's saving on the server, click on Save, and then wait at this area. Student. All right, so in this box, this is where you choose the PDF type. So that's why it doesn't really matter at the start which one you want to go for. Okay. Top under where it says presets, you guys can go ahead and click on that menu just to pop that open. And we're going to chat just a little bit about each of those. Now this relates directly to print. So you've got around, let's say 2, 4, 6 or so options here. Not all of them can be used for proper professional printing purposes. Now I'm going to start from the bottom. Smallest file size. This is only to be used if you intend to share the document over platforms like WhatsApp, email, social media, put it on a website, because what smallest file size will do is it's going to take all of your elements, especially your images, and it's going to decrease the quality of them so that it takes your PDF file size, and instead of it being, for example, 50 megabytes or 100 megabytes, it's going to cut that down to like maybe 10 or 20, depending on how much content you've got. So smallest file size does sacrifice the quality of your graphics and any images that you've placed in. Hence why it's only to be used if I'm intending for preview purposes. And this is not a file that I would then send out to get properly and professionally printed, especially for magazines, posters, and packaging. So smallest file size, preview purposes. Your printing options, you have 2 sets. You have a high quality print and a press quality, and then you have PDFX options. Now, all of these can be used for proper professional prints. However, there's a difference between it. And this largely sets the color mode of your document. So right now, everything we've got here is CMYK because we set that up for print, except your images. Those are RGB. Now, high quality print, what this does is it still makes sure that all of your images and all of your graphics are at the highest quality possible. Does that mean I'm going to end up with a small file size? No. Depending on how many images you've got, how high quality they're going to be, your file size is going to be, of course, perhaps larger than 10 megabytes. But this is what you'll want to use for proper professional prints. Now, if these are all for professional printing, what is the difference between them? High quality print is preferable if you are going to, or if your printer is using an updated printer, one that's not old school. And the reason why I'm referring to that is because printers have different software within it. So take, for example, your printers that you'll have at home, your desktop printers. You replace that after every few years, every 5 years, every 10 years. But if you think about the big production printers that I showed you guys when we were talking about colors and Pantone, how often do you think those printers get replaced? Yeah, decades, because those printers are expensive. Laptop or desktop printers, couple thousands. You can buy a big production printer for 500,000. Okay, 700,000, 800,000. That means you're not going to be wanting to replace that every 5 or 10 years, especially if you're working with an older printer. So what high quality print and press quality does is it keeps whatever color mode you've got in your document as is. So if you've got RGB images, it keeps it at RGB. If you accidentally mixed a color in RGB, it keeps it in RGB, because high quality print is compatible with updated printers that are running the latest software. And what that software does is it will do the conversion to CMYK for us. So if they are running a new printer, then that printer will convert whatever's RGB into CMYK for us. And that's usually your desktop printers, or it's referred to as a wide format, where they're about this large, and you see them in places like PostNet or those printing places in the mall. That's a wide format printer. Those are fairly new. They have the latest software. So high quality print and press quality still keeps your images as the highest quality possible, but it does not do any color conversion for you. PDFX. This is what's commonly used. In fact, if you are sending a PDF out for printing, you use PDFX4. That's your latest. What these files do is, right now at this moment, it will convert whatever's RGB into CMYK for us. It's not going to rely on the printer to do the conversion. Why? Because their large, massive printers are not always going to be up to date. So they might not have the software needed to do the RGB conversion. So to save them time and to save us time, I just swap over to PDFX or even PDF3. That's going to take any RGB and it's going to immediately convert that to CMYK. It's going to do that for me. If I leave it at high quality, it won't do that. It's going to rely on the printer themselves to convert for us. And in some cases, that might not always be accurate. So that is the biggest difference between your high and your press quality versus your PDFX. It also has a lot to do with gradients and how they are translated correctly. If you are using gradients in your design, you want to make sure that you've got a smooth transition out in print. But I'm sure you guys have probably tried to print out gradients on a home printer. Does it always come out smooth? Or in some cases, do you get lines that appear? That's referred to as banding, when the printer can't correctly adjust the ink so that they transition as smoothly as possible. Now, PDFX4 ensures that it converts correctly. Even elements like drop shadows, it's going to make sure that those fade out correctly. So your proper print-ready PDF is PDFX4. Now, if you are sharing to printers and you are not sure what PDF option to use, you can still ask them. You can ask them, what PDF format should I supply this to you as, if you're not sure. But a print-ready option is PDFX4, and that's what you'll use. Keeping in mind, this is going to end up with a large PDF file size because you're doing this for proper printing purposes. It needs the quality of your image, it needs the correct color conversions, and everything needs to come out smoothly. If you're using smallest file size, you're going to see pixelation, you're going to see blurriness, your gradients are going to look like there's lines in between. That's not the one you're going to want to use. All right, so those are the differences between your PDF options. Any questions about that? So if we ask you for a print-ready PDF, we're asking you for a PDFX4. If we want a smallest file size PDF, you choose smallest file size. Okay, but these are your print options. And by default, we should always go into X4. Okay, as a standard. All right. So when you choose one of these PDF settings, it sets up all the other options for you. If you go into compressions, or eventually when you understand resolution and how that works, this is going to make sense. But right now, this is sitting at 300 per image resolution. That's your standard for print. If I set this to smallest file size, that's going to 100. When we talk more about image resolution and how that affects printing, when it comes to actual paper prints, 100 is not enough. Hence why you don't send a smallest file size, because it's lowering the quality of your image. But if I set that to X4, 300 is enough. You don't need more than that. So that's one of the reasons why we check the printing PDF that we are using. Marks and bleed, very important. If you are sending out a design to be printed, how is your printer going to know how much bleed they need to cut off? Because it could be different for anybody. How do they know you've got bleed? You need to indicate that by using marks and bleeds. They are referred to as crop marks. So when you come into marks and bleeds, you can turn on all printer marks. This is mostly for the printer, okay? The actual person that's going to be taking your file and printing it out. This is going to help them check color. It's going to help them chop off the correct amount of bleed so that they don't chop off the design or give you the bleed itself and now your design looks weird. We need to make sure this is on. And then bleed and slug. Now, assuming you set up your bleed when you created your document, if you turn this on, all of these settings should automatically go into 5. If you didn't, you're going to have to manually type that in. So that's why it is important that from the beginning of your document creation, add in your bleed settings so that when you turn this on, it's done for you. So after you set your PDF, you go into marks and bleeds and you turn on the following. Do I need to use this if I'm exporting as smallest file size? No, because we cannot send a smallest file size for proper professional printing anyway, only for previewing purposes. So we do not need to have it on for this, only if you are using the other options. So marks and bleeds is where you go. You don't need to travel into any of the other areas as this is already set up based off your PDF option. Only marks and bleeds is what you're going to check because it doesn't automatically set that up. So once you've done with this, in the general settings, this is where you choose what pages from your document do you want to export. Now, right now, my entire file is going to export because I haven't specified. But if you need a particular page, you're going to set that up in pages. So right now, all of yours should say all. Range is if you want to set the number of pages in which you would need to type out which pages you want to export. Let's say pages 5 to 10, because you only need the last 5, you would type that out. But I'm setting that to all. Export as. Now, these two options are very important. Pages versus spreads. What's a spread? The double page. Okay, please don't tell me anything about sandwich spreads. That's not what we're talking about. Spreads in context of magazines. Now, when you created Caxton, you turned on facing pages. If you export this as pages, what do you think is going to happen in your PDF? Are you going to see your pages 2 and 3 next to each other? You're not. It's going to break them up into single individual pages. So in order to have them next to each other so that you can see the proper design, if you're working with facing pages, swap that over to spreads. Page 1 is still going to be on its own because it's a cover page, but the rest of your document is going to fit itself next to each other. So we must make sure spreads is on. And that's right now at this moment, the only thing you need to adjust. When we look at advanced InDesign, we will look at the rest of these settings. Okay, but spreads, PDF option, and marks and bleeds. That's where you go to set up your PDF for print. Once you are done here, you're going to hit export. And this is then going to export your PDF. And this is what my export looks like. Again, depending on your file size, how much you've got happening in there, that PDF is not always as fast. But set your PDF to export, and I'll show you in the meantime what to expect. So here is Caxton. Because I set that as spreads, I now have all of my pages next to each other. They haven't split up in single pages, like so. On each corner, you will see your printing marks. So here are your crop marks. So essentially, when the printer gets this document and they print it out, they will use these lines as a point to cut across. So this line, if I draw a line going down, that extra space is my 5mm bleed. They will use that as reference to cut. So by turning this on, you ensure that every single page has a set of its own crop marks on all four corners. They will use the other little elements as a means to align the pages and check the colors as well. These black and white and CMYK bars, they don't get printed out because it's part of the crop marks, gets chopped off. But this is what a PDF for print will look like. You'll have all of those little marks on the end. All right. Any questions about creating PDFs? Okay, then that means go back to InDesign. You didn't turn on your marks and bleed. So try exporting again. Creating that. And let's just save that. The place. Just try and give it a different name or close that PDF and then try again. Still have issues there. So that is your PDF options specifically for print. Now remember, if you are doing smallest file size for preview, you do not need to have crop marks and all of those elements on.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So after it's exported as a PDF, you guys will, of course, find that in your Finder. Cancel and just give it a different name. Okay. Yes, another group project.
Okay.
What's happening?
Oh.
You are creating a preset. New PDF preset. File. Preset. We're not choosing define. We're choosing high quality.
Yeah, but
And then we'll save.
sorry, so you went into
So export Adobe PDF versus create PDF preset.
I did that. Let me try. I thought it was saving the files. I thought it was saving the file. I didn't know that I done now.
Okay, let's go back there. Adobe, don't define. Yeah. Don't define. Choose one of the pre-made ones. So, yes, define is remove that. Yes. Oh, save. Where it's gonna go. Yeah. Crosswork, save.
Yeah, export. We're not done. Can we just save the preset and then export it when we're done?
Yeah. FX, go into marks and bleeds. Yeah, turn all those options on and bleed. Use document settings. Go back into general and make sure your export as is set to spreads. Yep, click on that and then export. And then that's it.
Power to the lecturer. Power to you, Miss Shannon.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So export marks and bleeds and export. You did your marks and bleed. Okay, turn on here. Yeah. And turn on here. And export. Okay. Then just say okay. All right, so after you export anything that's popping up, now if you have document errors that you did not fix up, it's going to tell you exported, but there are still issues. So even if you have document errors, it's not going to stop you from exporting. It's just going to tell you. All right, so again, smallest file size does not require you to have marks and bleeds. And please double check that when you guys are setting to export, file Adobe PDF presets, that we are choosing a preset and not clicking on define. If you are clicking on define, it assumes you want to make your own preset with your own settings. Now, we are not doing that. We are working with pre-made options. So don't click on define. All right. Now, I had a question that was not PDF related, but more so on the table that we created yesterday. And the question was, and this is going to be of benefit to all of you, how do I change the text color of all of my content without doing this individually? How do I change the text color of all of my text, because this needs to be white, without going and selecting every single piece individually? Now, before I show you this, everyone comfortable with PDFs? You can re-export your PDF after you are done with Caxton properly, but as far as your submissions go for your exercises, which I'll chat to you guys about that next, you're going to be submitting PDFs. Keep your InDesign files on your server. All right. Now, to answer the question with regards to the table, if you need to adjust text color of everything, grab your type tool. In your table, I'm going to select the entire table itself. Now, this is specifically for adjusting text color across everything. So I'll highlight the entire table. And then you'll go into your fill options. Now, here's the issue. If I'm going to be adjusting text and I have my entire table selected, when I go into my fill options and I set that to white, what's going to happen? is that perhaps either all of my cells are going to turn white, or I'm now going to get an outline for all of my options. Now, what I want to do is I only want to adjust the text itself. So you still go to your fill area. However, there's one little setting that you must change before you change the color, specifically for text. Above all of your color options, you have two icons, a square and the letter T. This is indicating what part of your table it's adjusting. The square is the shape. If you click on the letter T, I am asking it to adjust the text instead. So I click on that first, the letter T, and then I go and I change that color. When I do so, it is only going to adjust all the text within that table, rather than adjusting the table color itself. So this is specifically useful for if you've got text in a block and you are working with background colors and so on. So we highlight the table, go into your fill option, and we change your fill from shape to text. After you've changed it to text, we'll click on the color, and then that's your text color done, like so. Okay, so that's to answer the question of how do I change all of the colors of the text in a table without doing that individually. That's how you would go about doing so. Question? All right. Okay, so once you guys are done, you can go ahead and save up. And I'm just going to point out to you on your Learn portal. So I'm going to come around and hand out your very last exercise. But this is what you guys will be doing now after you're done with an exercise. On your Learn portal, in your InDesign category, while I wait for mine to load up, for every exercise that we do in class, as far as Caxton, Almay, Cadbury, and even your next and last exercise, which is Mexico, there is a submission area. So you'll find it in the InDesign tab, and it's going to be open until next week, Tuesday. So you have from today until Tuesday to do that. And that's typically how it's going to work for any module. Before you do your test, you must submit your exercises. So you'll see under your submission areas, we have opened up a submission for every exercise. Almay, Cadbury, Caxton, and Mexico. I'm asking for the PDF. I'm asking for the PDF from you guys when you are done with your exercise. So if you are done with Cadbury, Almay, and Caxton, either in the afternoon, in the mornings, you guys can export as your PDF and you can pop it in the relevant submission area. It is open until next week, Tuesday. So you have from today until then to finish that up and submit that, because those are the 3 exercises that we are done with. I only need the PDF. Keep your InDesign files on your server in case I need to go into them and see them. But in terms of PDF, smallest file size is okay. All right, just for submission purposes, smallest file size. Yes, Tuesday. Yes, which we'll give you today. Okay, so to answer the question, when it comes to your test, because it's not just a quiz, there's also a practical component. Your entire regular class time from 9 to 12 is your test. So on that Tuesday, we're not going to be doing any content. We're not going to be doing any lesson. You have the full class time to do your quiz and to do your practical. Once the 12 o'clock is done, if you're not finished with your prac, it's too bad. You're going to have to submit as is. Okay. Now it starts off as quiz first and then practical. You are not going to be able to start with practical first and then quiz. Okay. So no questions on that part. All right. Quiz. We will be doing a revision session on Monday for both the quiz and the practical component. So you guys, I ask that you come with your questions on Monday. Okay, you come with whatever you struggled with. I'm going to give you guys almost like a scope on what you need to go through. I'm going to go through some elements that you're going to want to sort of remember, but you're still going to have to refer to your transcripts and study on your own. Remember, it is open book as well on Tuesday. You'll only be doing an open book test for InDesign because it's technically your first proper software module. Okay. All right. Any other questions about exercises and test on Tuesday? Yeah? We are going to get that. Guys, please listen to me when I'm speaking. I'm still going to give that to you. Yes. You are welcome to take your transcripts and print those out. Because it's a test that you're doing on Learn, you're not going to be able to go into different tabs. You have to stay in the quiz. So I suggest that before you write your test, take whatever notes you've written down, clean those up, add to it. If you want to save a copy of your transcripts onto your phone, print it out, your tablet, whatever you use, keep that on hand. Okay, you are allowed to reference anything. That's not to say you have to Google your answers. Please, I don't want to see anybody copying and pasting questions into Google. You're not going to be able to do that at all. Okay, you have to use the notes that you have on hand. All right. Any other questions? Do I have a class this afternoon? You guys are welcome to stay in the afternoon to work. However, if you need assistance, I am not going to be available from around 1 to 2 o'clock. Right, so you'll have to catch any of the other lecturers that are going to be around. All right, now I'm going to come around and hand out Mexico. Now, huh? Yes. Yes. So Mexico, I suggest you guys do Mexico well. If you do Mexico well enough and you don't have as many issues as you would have had with Caxton, you will be more than prepared for the practical component. Okay, because it's similar. We give you a layout, you need to design it or redesign it. The only difference is I'm not going to be there to help and assist you. So I'm not part of your open book. Okay, just the notes that you have and the brain that's in your head. So you can't ask me any questions. I'll just look at you and say, I don't know. All right. So I'm not part of the open book. So if this is Mexico, you will largely be left to do this on your own, but I will start this with you and I will, of course, show you things that you, of course, are not going to be able to do because we haven't touched on it. So we'll start this together in class, but the most of it, you'll be doing this on your own. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to hand this out to you guys. And this is a printed out copy because we're working with spreads. So each of you are going to get a copy. You're going to, of course, find this on your server, all the assets that you need and the sample file as well. When you are done, you move on to that. Go.
We're using the smallest files for PDF
For
uploading.
yes, smallest file sizes.
And I actually export small files, but it says that the color behind space.
All right, does it still give you an option to say okay and continue? Just give this to the back. Guys, first things first, start off. This is not a group activity, okay? You are allowed to help each other. It is fine, but I don't want to see anybody sitting at anyone's computers and doing the work. Because if you can't at least start it by yourself, I don't know what you're going to do for your test. Your position before, played these games before, I know what it's like. So no talking in class. Now, Mexico, as you guys have seen, this is your last activity. Why we've given this to you guys is to show you similar to what you're going to get for your test. You will get given a printed out version like this, and you will see on the top corner, I'm just going to open this up. You're going to see a set of crop marks. Now, the crop marks are going to help you decide on the page size. So when it comes to your test, I'm not going to tell you the page size. You guys need to bring in elements like rulers. We'll remind you again before the day of the test. You'll need to bring in rulers, bring in a pencil, because you're probably going to want to make notes on your actual printout before you guys start. Now, when it comes to working with printed out copies like this, the first thing you're going to want to do is lay it out flat so that you can determine your crop marks. Now, when you get your ruler, I don't know if we have a ruler here. All right, so Babe will grab one for me. When you get your ruler, see if I can open up the actual copy of it. So the only thing that's not going to change for you guys is bleed. We know how much bleed needs to be added. But in terms of page sizing, this is not A4. It's not an A4 document. So when you get your ruler, what you're going to do, just going to turn on the camera here. You're, of course, before or after looking at your design. This on, there we go. There's my crop marks on either end, like so. I'll take my ruler and I will align it underneath each crop mark. And there we go, like so, underneath each crop mark. And I will draw a line across the page. That is then going to tell me for my page sizing. Now this is divided in half. So there is another line that's in the middle that's running down. So you will need to spend a couple of minutes before you design or create your document blocking out your crop marks. Once you've got your crop mark lines down and across, you will then be able to measure the width and height of your page. Lead will be consistent, 5 millimeters always. So that is how we're going to start off with your document. Now for Mexico in particular, we've provided the start file for you. But for your test, you're not going to get a start file, right? You may be provided or you may be asked to create on your own. So you must be familiar with your crop marks and how to measure. So your crop marks, you take a ruler and you block out your lines across. That's what you need to do. All right. And so each copy and each page will have it. Now, the thing about this is you only need to do it once because then your page sizing is going to be the same for everything thereafter. All right. Any questions about that? We supply you the text. So anything that's not supplied, you will need to make on your own. But when it comes to the article copy within this, we have this supplied to you as part of your assets. Yes, the required fonts, everything is there. Okay. If you need a more detailed breakdown in terms of Mexico and what is expected as part of your InDesign exercises on your Learn portal, there is a set of Mexico instructions. So in Learn or on Learn, there's a Mexico exercise brief specifically for this activity. I'm going to download that and open it. Similar to how you had one for Cadbury, where it's going to tell you the page size. So in this case, we've given you the page size. And this is kind of similar to how your practical is going to go as well. You'll get given a brief and you'll get given the printed out layout. The brief is going to give you all the information that you need as far as page sizing, the fonts that you need to use, and if you need it, color breakdown. So this is on the Learn portal for you. So I've provided you the sizing already, so I've made that part easier. I've told you where to find your imagery. Any graphics that's not there, you will create yourself. Now, a lot of the images here are provided, so no one's going to be needing to make the skeleton. You're not going to be needing to try and make this little sun element. Those are images. But little graphic options like text, okay, gradients in text, you're going to be needing to make that. Okay, so I do suggest before we start, look through the provided assets so that you know what you don't need to make. We've also specified what needs to be on the parent pages. So page numbering, Mexico silhouette is with regards to the map. The page border, so this little squiggle element that goes around the page, as well as any other overrides. Now, there are parts of this that I'm going to go through with you. Okay, so things like overriding, I need to go through that with you guys. So you're not left in the dark there. Color breakdowns has all been provided to you guys. So that's already part of your start file. Text files, your main copy has been provided. Anything not there, like headings, subheadings, you need to do that. Body copy, we've given you hints here in terms of it needs to be split up into columns as well. And we've also provided the fonts. So these are the fonts and what you need to use. In terms of where you need to use them, I suggest going and applying them to a single piece of text, seeing what they look like first, and then you go and apply it. So I'm not going to tell you which font to use specifically where, but these are the list of the provided fonts. Tables, there's some instructions on the table. Styles, where possible, use your character and paragraph styles, tabs, and so on. For Mexico, there's specific page instructions. So this is a direct reflection of what to expect for your practical test and how it's going to work. Except this time, I'm not helping you with anything on it. Okay, so you'll get a brief with instructions, which you read carefully, and we also tell you how to submit as well. For Mexico in particular, I want a packaged file along with a PDF. All right, now this we will reference as the days go for today, tomorrow, and Monday. But this, I do suggest downloading this off the Learn portal, keeping it on your computers so that you can reference this as you're going through with Mexico. All right, any questions about the exercise before we get started together? Okay, what I'd like you guys to do before we start is on your server, in your training folder, just wait for mine to connect. InDesign, exercises, Mexico. Okay, in your training folder for Mexico, what I want you guys to do is take the entire asset file. Okay, so once you get to the stage, take the entire asset file, right-click on it, and copy. We're going to copy all of the assets that you need, including the start file. So once you go into Mexico Assets, you're going to right-click on that file and copy. After you've copied the assets folder, you can then go onto your named folder. And in your InDesign file, there's my InDesign here. You'll right-click and paste item. So I want you guys to copy the entire asset folder for Mexico and paste it into your server folder. That's going to give you both the assets as well as the start file. We are doing this so that everyone has their own individual start file. Otherwise, there's just one, and only one person can use it. So copy and paste that across. And just let me know if you need any help with that as well. Yes, it is. Okay, so in this file, since part of it has been set up and there are assets to it, it is a big file. So just wait for that to copy and paste that across into your folder. Yes. Okay. If yours is giving you an area where it's saying hours, I want you to cancel it. Okay, if your file hasn't copied across and it's saying 3 hours, 2 hours, just cancel it. We're going to do an alternative method. Okay, once more, guys, if your InDesign copy and paste across is telling you it's going to take 2 to 3 hours, cancel it. Click on the little X and just let that stop. We'll have to do a different method. If you've canceled your file, what you're going to do instead is through your assets, just open up the Mexico start file. Okay, seeing as copying is going to take too long since we are all doing this at the same time, cancel it, go straight back into Mexico assets and just double click on the start file. Double click on that and let that open up onto your InDesign software. Okay. Has everyone managed to get that Mexico file open? So we're gonna close. Okay, let's leave that while it's canceling. And let's just go straight back onto your server. Go into InDesign and in Mexico, your start file, just double click and open that up.
I still forgot to ask.
Double click on it.
Yeah.
Okay, open your InDesign file, please. Mexico. Just select them two out. Opening the file, double click on the start file, let it load up and open. All right, guys. So first thing we're going to do before we start working, the InDesign file that I have made you open is a template file. So it's not an IDML, it's not an INDD, it's an INDT. That's a template file. So that means when you guys are working or before you work, to save your own copy of this, I suggest all of us right now do a file save. So before we start working, let's do a file save and save this copy now onto your server folder and call that Mexico. Okay, because we've decided we are not copying this across instead, as it's going to take too long, we are opening it up from training. And when you are saving it, please don't leave that as untitled, call it Mexico. You don't need to adjust anything else in this view. Just hit save, and then you should be good to go. All right. So once you guys have saved this, I want you all to pay attention, because once I've done set you guys up with this with few of the areas you're going to need, you're going to be left on your own to work. And then if you need me to demonstrate anything and you're struggling, I will do so. But it's not going to be like Caxton, where I went through every single page with you guys, only little bits and pieces. So the first thing we're going to do here, after you've saved it, looking at the document, we have provided some of the setup for you already with some images, any graphic elements that you need, as well as a little bit of text. Now, do we need to do anything to the document setup of this? So not the layout itself, but the actual InDesign pages. Are we missing anything from here? Remember, this is to be for print purposes. So are we missing anything? We're missing a bleed and columns and margins. So we are missing all of those guides that we would initially set up when creating the file from scratch. Now, because you've been provided a pre-made file, we need to add those elements in. So where are we going to go to add in margins and bleed? Okay, layout menu, margins and columns. That is specifically for your margin options. And for your bleed options, you're going to File, Document Setup. In here, you can also adjust margins. So you have two areas, except the Document Setup under the File menu allows you to also work with bleed as well. Okay, just give me a second here. All right. So as far as your bleed goes, we're going to add in a bleed of 5 millimeters, of course. Okay. And as far as your margins go, does anyone have a ruler on them? A ruler. Okay, so this is what I want you to do. If you are not going to know how to get your margins, because right now, there's nothing here that's going to give you an indication. It's also not part of your instructions on how much margin spacing you actually need. So this is how we're going to measure margins. So I've given you the page size as part of your actual instructions. But for your margin spacing, what I suggest, if you are not sure on how much of a margin spacing you should leave, I'm just going to do this on my end. Okay. Once you've got a line that is connecting your crop marks. Okay, it's frozen. All right, so once you've got a line that is connecting your crop marks. Now, I am doing this on a page that has some text in it, because the text is what you're going to use to help you get your margins. You're going to create a line that's running down one side of your page, but this line is connecting your crop marks. Now, this is why we have to measure the crop marks. So every crop mark that I have, I've connected those two lines on either end. This is the side where it is not connected. There's my crop mark over here and my other crop mark on this end that I haven't joined with the pencil, but I've done this on the opposite end. Once I've got a crop mark created, I know that is the end of the page. So your crop mark is indicating the end of your page. So that means, should I now need to go and measure my margin spacing? I take my ruler, this is the wrong side, but I'm going to then measure from the end of my text box to where that line is that I've drawn. And that is going to give you your margin spacing. So you draw a line connecting your crop marks. And then from the end of your text box, because you can see it's uniform, it's not going off to my page. From the end of that, I'll take my ruler and I'll measure it from the end of that text box to where my line sits. And that's going to give you your margin spacing for all 4 sides. So I want you guys to go ahead and do that. Measure out a crop mark or connect them, and then measure out your margin spacing from there. Yeah, I think that was 10 or so. Okay. Anyone managed to measure out those margins? What's the value? Okay. Anyone got something different than 10? Oh. Yeah, text to the line. So your correct measurement is 10 millimeters. Okay? So that's how much you're getting. Andrew, I think you measured from bleed, from crop to the end of the design. That would give you 3. Okay. So the correct measurement is 10 millimeters. So once you guys are done, let's add that in. So find a page with some text, and that's going to make it a bit easier. So let's use from here to the connecting line here. Because remember, these crop marks are showing you the end of your page. This extra content is bleed. Okay, then you will measure from the end of your text to the end of the page. And that's going to give you around 10 or so. Okay, we round it off to 10. All right, guys. So your measurements are 10 millimeters for your margins all the way around. And please also add in your bleed setting. You don't need to adjust anything else in here as the width and height has already been done and so on. So once you've got that, we're going to say okay, and then that's your setup done. Okay, so. Okay, once you guys are done, add those in. And let's sort out your parent pages. Now, if you look at the rest of Mexico, I'm going to need your attention for this. If you look at the rest of your Mexico layout, I'm opening up the digital copy. How you design this is you're going to open up your pages flat and you're going to design it across a 2-page spread. So your first set of pages is going to be both your cover page and your back page. Okay, hence why it's set up like this. So you need to use the document setup. So our first set of pages is going to be our sort of greenish yellow background. Your second set of pages is going to be your orange, then your blue, then your yellow. And that's going to be your 4-page document. That's how it's going to be set up. But if you look at this, you of course need to identify what is staying consistent throughout every single page that needs to be done on the parent page. The border. Okay, what else needs to go on the parent page? The folios, the page number. So we have a consistent border, we have a consistent page number. We also have a consistent background map element. That's Mexico. The only difference between this is the fact that the colors change per spread. However, we still are going to use parent pages as a means for having it duplicate throughout the design. And then I'm going to show you how you can interact with them on their own individual page by page basis. So this is adding on to what you already know about parent pages. So in your document, we're going to set up the border and the background first. In your document, once you've got your margins and your bleed, let's go into your pages palette. Here you can see your setup. You don't have a single page for your front and your back cover. That has been blended into a double page spread. You've got your parent page elements, which is where your map is going to sit. We're going to go ahead and double click into that parent page so that we go onto that set. So we are now working on the parent page itself. All right. So I need us all to make sure we are on this element. Now, with regards to the rest of Mexico, in the Mexico shape, there is a background or there is an image inside, which means similar to Almay, similar to Cadbury, you are going to need to be able to place an image inside of that map and also change the color of it. Now, I'm not going to show you that because we've done that quite a few times, but all of those assets are in your linked folder. You will just need to find the correct one that you need to use. So I'm not going to do that step. What I'm going to do with you guys here is the border element, and then I'm going to show you how to customize the color per page. Okay. To make life easier, let's go ahead and select this map, go into Object, and lock it. Because to create the border, we don't want to accidentally be selecting that. So on your parent page, which you double click on, select the map, Object, Lock. And then I want you guys to create a rectangle that's going to go across both of those pages. Keep in mind, it needs to go into your bleed and give that a default color, preferably one that's not the same color of the map, but just create a large rectangle over your entire page. Okay, so not two separate rectangles, one large rectangle. Double click. Double click. No, in your parent page. Double click. There you go. Okay. So one large rectangle. Now we're going to use this rectangle to help us create the border. Now the border itself, if we have a look at it in Mexico, is fairly straight along the outside edges. It is the inside that has those squiggles, those curves, and those lines. So we now need to use something, or we need to do something that's going to help us get that same design, where the outside is straight, but the inside has those squiggle effects. So we need to make a custom shape to do this. That's going to have very curved and rounded and sort of zigzag outlines. Now, what tool do we know at the moment that's going to allow us to create those curves? Okay, Pathfinder is something we are going to need, but the pencil tool. Now, the pencil tool, again, it's going to create a lot of paths for you. It's going to create a lot of anchor paths. And what you're going to have to be careful of is when you guys are using your pencil tool, you're going to have to be aware that you're not accidentally sort of drawing and making odd shapes. This is going to give you a lot of anchors, and it's going to add to your file size, which is why, as you've seen, I haven't really been using the pencil tool for most of the shapes. We've been straying away from that. This is only really helpful if you're going to be using like a stylus or a drawing pad. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to use our pen tool for this. Now, if we think back to Cadbury, I showed you guys how to use the pen tool, but that was for straight lines. We're going to look at this in context of curved lines this time. So I'll grab my pen tool. A brief recap on how this works. This is setting down my custom anchors and paths. The pen tool or the pencil tool was automatically adding those in for me. At least this way, I get to control how many paths I have and how many anchor points I can work with. I always set an outline color, and I personally never set a full color until after I've drawn the shape. So I'm going to give this an outline, and I'm just going to use a color that I can see here as well. Keep that to black, that's fine. And I'll also just increase the thickness of it. Now your pencil tool or your pen tool works as follows. You're not clicking and dragging like the pencil tool. Wherever you are starting, you are clicking once. Now keeping in mind, this is going into my page, right? So I need to start on the page itself. Wherever I start, I click once. And then I let go. I'm not clicking and dragging, I click once. Now, in order to make the next part, if I move my cursor over and I click again, it creates a straight line, which is not what we want. If you keep clicking over a certain distance, it creates a straight line. What we want to do instead is we still want to create that path, but we want it to curve. We want it to have curves and folds to it. So instead of clicking once and letting go, for my second point, I click and I drag. Can you see what's happening to my path? It is curving. And wherever I move my mouse up or down, that is adjusting how steep of a curve I get. So one more time, I click and I drag. Click and drag. Now you can do this in smaller distances, you can do them in larger distances. I am not going to be looking specifically to see if you copied the exact same curves as Mexico. Okay, I'm not going to be looking at elements like that. As long as you've got a curly border, that is okay. So to start you off again, pen tool, click once for where you want to start. And then as you go along your border, click and drag to set down the second anchor point, but to curve the line. So click and drag and continue. If you want longer curves, then you click further away. If you want shorter curves, you click closer to your previous anchor point. But it's a click and a drag. And that's going to give you that curved border. And as I continue, I'll be able to add this around the page. This method, you are not going to get any straight lines within it. So I'm going to continue to do this throughout the rest of the design itself, all the way around my entire page, not page by page, the entire page. So you guys can go ahead and create that on your end. And this is more or less what you should have. Custom sort of rectangle looking shape, but the outline is zigzag. It's curved, it's got some uneven edges. That's what we're looking for. Let's zoom in. Firstly, we created a rectangle that was going across, it goes across the entire design, because this is one border, and leave that to yellow, and we left it. Then you grab your pen tool, taking out the full color here, and just leaving the outline. And then wherever you want to start, let's add in our margins first, so that we don't confuse it. So that 10. So you know your border needs to happen here. Now, wherever you choose to start, let's say we start here, click once, go to another area, click and drag. And as you're dragging your mouse, if you move it around, you get to control the curves and steepness on it. With a click and a drag. And you are just doing the same process all the way around until you get back to your starting point. I do not have the time to go and make sure every little curve is exactly the same. This is the only time where it is okay that it looks a bit different, okay? Because it is just a bunch of squiggles and curves. As long as we've got the concept down of how to create curves, that's fine. Now, this is a pretty abstract shape. Later on, next week, when we get into Illustrator, we're going to be using the pen tool a lot more often to create custom designs where it's not going to just be arbitrary squiggles on the page. It's going to be used for more controlled designs, more curves, more parts. So right now, this is an introduction to the pen tool itself. Illustrator, we will go a bit more in depth with this. Okay, so by now, we should all have some form of a wonky outline that we're going to use. This is now the shape that we're going to take to make our border. So if I give this a color, this is what I am essentially seeing. But the problem is I cannot see the map that is behind it. So now that I've got the rectangle squiggle and I've got my background, the next step is, as Andrew did mention, to Pathfinder. We need to take this shape and cut it out of the rectangle that you made at the back so that you were able to see through it and see the map. So that is why we went about doing two separate shapes. So I'm going to select my rectangle, my squiggle that I made, and I'm also going to select my yellow shape behind it, or whatever color rectangle you made. I'm going to select both of those. Then we are going to head up into our Pathfinder. And which Pathfinder option is going to allow me to take the shape at the top and cut it out from the one at the back? Which Pathfinder option? Subtract. That is going to be your second option. So once you guys have your pen tool path you've created, select it as well as the rectangle you made behind it. With them both selected, go into your Pathfinder palette, click on your subtract, and that is going to cut a hole out of it that still leaves behind your squiggle border. Except this time you will see the map coming through behind it. Select. What are you trying to do? Yeah. What do we want to do? The frame. Yeah, this is your rectangle behind it though. The yellow is the big rectangle we made behind it. So if we undo what we've just done here, just click out of that for me. Undo. So you select the outline of this and you give that a full color. That doesn't have a color. So none is not going to make it see-through because you're seeing behind it into the yellow shape. So you need to pathfinder that. So select your yellow shape and your outline. And go into your pathfinder and use your subtract. There we go. Okay. So none doesn't mean see-through. Ashley, go back to your selection tool. Okay, black arrow, selection tool. Select your outline and your yellow shape, both of them. Okay, do we have the outline selected? Then go into Pathfinder. That's window, object and layout. Pathfinder, subtract. Now you've got a hole. That's the shape that you made. Okay. Okay, guys. So one more time. In order to get to see the map coming through it, I have to select that shape that I made, my custom squiggle. I also have to select the yellow rectangle that's behind that. And with both of those selected, we head up to your Pathfinder and you choose your subtract option. That is then going to allow you to see through that rectangle and to the map behind it. After I've done that, I can then go and change those colors to match the blue that I need. Now remember, all of your swatches have been made for you. So when you go into your fill area, you're not using document colors. We have made Pantone colors that you will be using. Okay. Yeah, Pantone colors for free, sure. Okay, so these are the colors you will need to use. Whether you need to adjust the tint or not, that you will need to see in your design. Okay, so once you guys are done here, let's go ahead and save this. We're going to end off here today. Tomorrow, I'm going to go through how to change your colors per page, because right now on every page, you're going to have a consistent blue border. We're also going to chat a little bit about page numbers as well. And that's going to be the little bit of Mexico that I'm going to show you. All right. But largely, you guys will be given time tomorrow to do this as well. Okay, so please keep these on you. And we'll come back to this. So save your start file. You don't want to be doing this tomorrow morning again. Save your start file onto your server. And then you can close up for today. Please don't forget to log out of those servers as well.